Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. When my husband, son, and I moved into a new apartment, I was barely over 40. My son is in his first year. My husband is in a prestigious job. Nothing foreshadowed trouble. The neighbors were nice people, and the apartment was beautifully renovated. And the son was happy. He finally found friends, a girl. My husband and I both worked. My husband travels more often, and I'm mostly in the office. My son began to go on trips with fellow students. A couple of times, I even had to pick him up from country villas if he got drunk. My father was told only about his exploits, and I knew about all his failures. One winter, after the January holidays, I had a vacation. At first, I thought I would fly somewhere to the south with my friend, the same tie. At the last moment, the friend refused, citing a vague feeling of well-being. She was afraid that she had been poisoned, and in Asia such things are easily scaled. At first it was a bit insulting, and then I figured that our beautiful winter cottage was standing alone and went there for the whole vacation time to watch TV series. It would seem that the apartment is large, the husband is often not there, and the son is also at home only in the evenings. The walls are thick, even if you scream, but somehow it's still awkward. What if someone comes in? And if the son suddenly returns? So I left all my toys in the old place, without moving them to a new apartment. It took about 2 hours to get there. What I didn't take into account is that it's getting even darker than in a city where all the streets are flooded with streetlights. And you also need to flood the oven, turn on the hot water, and batteries. In general, there was no talk of going to bed with toys soon. The 2-story massive house creaked heavily as it unlocked and opened the door. Feeling for the toggle switch with her hand, she turned on the light in the hallway and walked on. The rest of the way lay in the basement, where the control panel was located. To my surprise, the basement door wouldn't budge. I'm not weak, but the door didn't seem to feel my pressure at all. After 2 minutes of trying, red palms, and a second of rage, I gathered myself and dialed my neighbor, Daniel. He always helped us with household issues because by profession he was nothing but a builder. Daniel, hi. It's me, Sarah. Sarah, by what fates? Have you come or what? Where's James? The neighbor's voice sounded strange and confused. James is not with me today, and my basement door is jammed. Can you help me? I would love to. Daniel always started his excuses with this phrase, but I can't yet. Why don't I send my son? Jack will do everything wonderfully. I've got such a horse. Any door at once. Okay, if it doesn't work out, I'll call you again. The prospect of going back home without satisfaction was frightening and annoying. In my memory, Jack was much weaker than Beatty, and according to my forecasts, in 5 minutes I would have to call Daniel again. Aunt Sarah, exclaimed the young man who appeared at my door literally 2 minutes later. I am so glad to see you. It's me, Jack. Didn't you find out? And then I was stunned. Jack was the same age as my son, but now he looked more like his father than my son. Broad shoulders, big hands, obviously already overworked. For some reason, my first boyfriend came to mind. I was still about 19 years old at the time. I was in my second or third year, and he was already teaching. Nothing worked out with my first one, so in graduate school, I started a relationship with my husband with a pure heart. Almost immediately after the wedding, a child was born and family life began to spin. Fortunately, due to such an early birth, the body recovered instantly, and I was the only young mother among my friends who managed to restore her figure. The child was 3 years old, and I had already returned to my career and was combining. He grew up under the attention of nannies and teachers. James wanted to make a scientist out of him, so he didn't skimp on books, technology, or teachers. Now the child and Jack are the same age, but one of them already looked more like a seasoned trucker, and the other a classic computer scientist. Jack, is that you? Can you help me with the door? So, when I saw the boy who grew up in front of my eyes every summer and winter, I quickly put down the phone and realized that we could probably cope without Daniel. Is your father ill by any chance? What? The guy raised his eyebrows, already putting his hand to the door handle. What makes you think, Aunt Sarah? Yes, the voice was too strange and weak. I didn't have time to finish the sentence when suddenly Jack laughed in his throat. He looks just like his father. What are you laughing at? Seeing the disappointment on my face, he silently started working on the door. It had to be broken down, but the result was achieved. We have included all the house infrastructure: heating, water, gas, and electricity. Oh, thank you. Can I thank you? I brought a lot of food here, tea and wine too. Oh, I wish I had some wine. If possible. Aunt Sarah. Jack became animated at first, and then realized that he was the same age as Paul. Well, or at least let me take a shower. Otherwise, Dad got so carried away on holidays that in a day or two the hot water in the taps is naughty. Come on, I want to tell my parents. Let's go. Of course, go to the shower too. She looked at the boy with understanding and smiled at her thoughts. It seems it's time to send Paul to the sport. And her husband too. We spent the next hour sorting out my bags and warming up with tea. The last time Jack went out to get some things to the car, he somehow fell unsuccessfully and collapsed right into the snow. I went out to the noise and realized that he was all wet. The maternal instinct kicked in, and I had to drag him to the bathroom to warm him up and wrap him in warm clothes. Don't even come out of here until you warm up. I had to take his wet clothes away from him so that he would not give up his husband's replacement sweater and house pants. But, Aunt Sarah, I am. No, I'm not. Come on. All. Wash up and come to your senses. You'll warm up inside with wine later. After half an hour in the hot bathroom, Jack came out nice, clean, warm and dry, and I felt like a student. About 20 years ago, when I was staring at boys and dreaming about how they would be me, oh, stop. We need to stop. You're very kind, Aunt Sarah. So, just call me Sarah, okay? I'm not that old to be an aunt. Of course. The guy was clearly embarrassed, and it was obvious that his cheeks were blushing not from the steam, but from my words. Can I thank you, Sarah? Jack came up to me sitting on a chair and looked down at me, causing redness on my cheeks. I've already had 3 glasses while I was waiting for him and managed to dream. Me? Yes, for what? No, it's okay. Jack, I turned away from him towards the window to check if the lights of the neighbors were on. Maybe they're already asleep and won't notice that I'm stealing their sun for the night. That's it. Enough. You can't. I was already mentally slapping myself on the cheeks. Sarah, I see that I can definitely do something. Smiling, Jack turned my face to himself with a strong and large palm. Are you completely out of your mind? Squeaking, I began to push away. Although my body had already given up, my wife's brains and conscience did not allow me to calmly give myself up to the adventure. I've been dreaming since childhood. The best mom in town. If I had a mother like that, I'm married. And your friend is my son. Lucky bastards. He copied his father, but clearly surpassed him in emotion. Not a single word I said had any effect on him. On the contrary, Jack seemed to like the idea that he was about to win a married woman for himself. There were tears in my eyes, and I started crying, afraid of getting knocked up. What will happen to my son and family if I get pregnant on the side? The guy obviously didn't want to see my tears. Since childhood, if Jack has hammered something into his head, then until he breaks his head, he will not score. So apparently I decided not to slow down here either. Conversely, add an ad. The night ended abruptly, just as it had begun. He left me on the bed and went to his family. If he says a word to them about what happened last night, my marriage is over. But how can Jack close his mouth so that James doesn't find out? Problem. To all my excuses and complaints, he said one thing. It's necessary, Sarah, it's necessary. And that's how it all started in the kitchen. It was at this moment that Paul, my son, appeared on my doorstep. He found out from my letter yesterday that I was in a country house and went to my place to help with the housework, set up the internet better. In my mind, I already fainted, but Jack got his bearings easily. A son? The son. Is it worth it? It's worth it. It was only after hearing about his friend that he finally left the shower and then left the house through the back door. All I had to do was put on my usual smile, calmness, put on warm pajamas, and open the front door for my son. The son was excited, said that he had not been here for a long time. Emotions surged through him. He remembered the photos where, in a very tiny form, he was fed from a bottle here, and then rocked in his arms and played various games. And then something clicked in my head. Considering that someone's life was probably already beginning in me at that moment, I understood that hormonal disruptions were ahead. Here's one that seems to have come. I took my son by the hands and took him to the attic. There were old photo albums lying there. Such photos that reflected the inner atmosphere of the family and which cannot be posted to the public. Paul, I've been thinking, you're an adult now, aren't you? So it's time to look at the photo, not with a bottle. With these words, I nodded mysteriously to my son and took out album number 9. This album was with all the photos related to the process of motherhood. Mom, that's what it is. I have known since childhood what it is to make love. Yes, dear. All children know involuntarily. Let's lie down. She spoke hoarsely in her son's ear. Mom, but it's dirty here. Don't think about it. Good. We sat down on the floor of the attic, surrounded by old and even ancient things somewhere. Mom, I don't know. Are you sure? My girlfriend got pregnant. This news stunned me. He never told me that. And why don't I know about it? I discussed it with my father. It would be awkward with you. MMH. And how many girls have had children from you? 3. Oh, son. Well, you were silent. We left the cottage at night. I didn't want to stay, and I was afraid Jack would ruin everything. He clearly did not want to give up, because in the morning, when I woke up with my son in the same bed, I read a dozen messages about the plans of the neighbor's boy, both to me and to the unborn child. A month later, my husband returned, and I told him a fairy tale that he was the father of our child. There was no need to prove paternity. James believed and was extremely glad. He had been dreaming for a long time, but he was afraid of my refusal. And here is such a joy. My son and I mentally exhaled that everything remained unnoticed. We did not even think to admit our adventures to our husband. We just agreed that after giving birth, I would go with my child to live somewhere in a warm country, and my son would study there on an international scholarship. My husband will come, of course, but not often. The last thing I'm going to tell you is how the last days of pregnancy went. My husband was stuck at the airport, the flight was delayed, and the deadline was approaching, and I was worried that I would give birth alone. Paul calmed me down, said that everything would be fine, and that very soon the 3 of us would be somewhere far away. About 3 months later, the baby appeared. Since then, I have 2 children, one from her husband, the other from her son, or from his neighbor friend.